Act 4. I regret that we meet this way. You and I are of a kind. It has come down to a waiting game. Both ships powered down in the neutral zone to prevent detection. After the Enterprise has been powered down for 9 hours and 47 minutes, Kirk tries to rest in his quarters when his human Rand walks in and asks if the captain would like something to eat. Yes, Janice, I would like something to eat. Dr. McCoy arrives as Rand leaves. McCoy gives him kind of a weird, like, mathematical speech. In this galaxy, there's a mathematical probability of 3 million Earth-type planets, blah, 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 blah. And he comes down to the point that on each of those, in each of that situation, there's only one of us. Don't destroy the one named Kirk. Because you can see that Kirk is just driving himself batty, trying to figure out what to do here. Almost to a Captain Ahab level.
Yeah, it's not quite that bad, but yeah.
But I said almost. I put a qualifier in there.
No, that wasn't a judgment on you saying that. I was just saying, like, I could definitely see what you're saying. It's not quite to obsession. It's not quite obsession yet, but I guess McCoy sees something.
Yep. What I find interesting about Star Trek is how often the obsession with, because it's almost the case here, but not quite. And then there's the episode with the what were those things? The Doomsday Machines and Commodore Decker and his obsession with destroying it. And then later with Khan and his obsession with destroying the Enterprise, and then Picard and his obsession with destroying the Borg. How often that little hook can be used for a story element.
Well, I mean, I think Picard had a reason to want to do that. They assimilated him.
Mm-hmm. Of course, it's the first time he ever reacted like that, and we don't need to get into the next gen movies just yet, probably. But all right, so later on, Spock is making repairs on the bridge and accidentally activates a panel. And the Romulan ship detects the Enterprise and moves into attack.
I feel like they could have made somebody else do that. That doesn't seem like something Spock would do.
No, but everybody can make a mistake, and this also ratchets up the racist fears and tension, From a preserving the character standpoint, I certainly see where you're coming from, but from a ratcheting up the drama, I get why they did it. Kirk anticipates this and manages to fire on the Romulan ship. Furious, the Romulan commander orders more debris into the disposal tubes, including a nuclear warhead. Spock detects, here's Eric's thing. Spock detects the metal cased object and triggers a nuclear explosion. The Romulan captain uses this as a way to beat a hasty retreat for home. Scott reports that while the phasers are operational, only Tomlinson, the groom from the wedding, is manning the station. Stiles, surprisingly, has a skill besides just being a racist. And says, hey, I was a weapons officer on my previous ship. How about I go give him a hand? And Kirk's like, yeah, just take that pointy hood off before we go, please. So Kirk decides now they're going to play dead and try to lure the Romulan ship back to them. Despite his reservations and the crippled status of his own ship, the Romulan commander is reminded by Decius that it's his duty to crush the enemy. And the commander then reluctantly gives the order to attack. Spock is checking on the phaser crew when Silas coldly remarks that, hey, we'll handle things here without your help, Vulcan. This is Spock's like, all right, dude. So he's going to take off. But the next thing you know, there's a coolant leak that erupts in the phaser room. I think this is the only time they ever put the phaser controls in a separate room. I'm not sure 100%, but it sure seems like it to me, just off the top of my head.
What do you mean, like off of the bridge?
Off of the bridge, yeah. I think this is the first time we ever see them actually handled from like an actual room. That's just all we do in this room is handle the weapons.
I mean, I could see on a starship that big, and we said what the crew was like 200.
Well, at this point, it's 400 something.
400. It's still a large ship, though.
Yeah.
I could imagine there's probably not a presence in there like all the time, since a lot of that stuff gets handled on the bridge. But it's not out of the ordinary for a system to be able to be controlled from more than one spot.
Yeah, isolated and kind of put into its own command structure or something.
Yeah, but then you could also use it from the bridge or whatever. There's probably a couple more rooms you could use it from if you need to.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I just think this is the only time they ever showed it, I think. I'd have to double check, but it sure seems like it off the top of my head.
You'd have to watch the entirety of TOS, because doubtful somebody has Well, that's probably not true. I'm sure that somebody has cataloged all that stuff.
Oh, I'm sure somebody has, yeah. As the Romulan ship moves back in for attack, Kirk gives the order to fire, but Stiles and Tomlinson have been overcome by the coolant fumes. Realizing the danger, Spock runs back in and manages to fire the phasers in time, severely damaging the Romulan ship. At the same time, it was reminding me really, really, really heavily of the Wrath of Khan. Visual contact between the ships is somehow established as Kirk watches a severely wounded Romulan commander stagger to his feet. The Romulan commander turns and looks at Kirk, and he says with admiration, "I regret that we meet in this way. In a different reality, I could have called you friend." And as the last part of his duty, he sets the Romulan ship to self-destruct. Now, Kirk had offered to beam them before. I mean, he really went out of his way to give these guys a way out. Hey, we'll beam you in. We'll take care of whatever needs to be taken care of. And Romulan commander's like, "No, we are creatures of duty. Here's what we do." And Kirk watches regretfully as that ship is destroyed.
Yeah, captain goes down with his ship, man.
That's it. Kirk goes to sickbay and discovers that not only did Spock fire the phasers, but that he also rescued Stiles. Unfortunately, Spock was not able to save Robert Tomlinson.
Oh, no.
Kirk is then forced to console the grief-stricken fiancée, Angela Martine, while she stands alone in the chapel. "We both have to know there was a reason," Kirk says to her. She tearfully assures the captain that she'll be fine and leaves. And that is Balance of Terror.
Yeah.
So, Eric, this was your first episode of Star Trek. What did you think?
Well, I wanted to know just how many people on that set actually struck a chord with, and if they were able to process what the true meaning of this episode was even about at that time.
I imagine they were. I mean, it's not really subtle.
On the set, yes, but with all these people you hear saying stuff like, "Oh, Star Trek's too woke nowadays," and then you go back and you watch this episode from 56 years ago and go, guys.
Oh yeah, it's just like when people say that Marvel is the same way, and I have this picture of a letter from the editor from Stan Lee, just basically demolishing that argument from years and years and years ago.
Oh yeah,
so, it's so funny that some of these fandoms that are rooted in bringing up social issues and stuff like that people would still complain about it, even though from its inception, or at least very close to it, they've pretty much always been dealing with social issues one way or another.
Oh yeah, I mean, quite heavily. I mean, to stick with your Marvel analysis, originally X-Men was about racism. I'd say in the 90s and early 2000s probably turned into gay rights more than anything else. But Star Trek, I hear people, I hope the new series isn't overly political. Compared to what? I mean, compared to Star Trek, the show that had a half black, half white, half black guy locked in eternal combat until they destroyed each other. What part of Star Trek did you not watch in the past? That's what I'm confused about.
I mean, in all fairness, this episode was just a few years after integration even started.
Oh, yeah. Yes. And, most people on this show, you'll find this more as we get into things, but Eric, there's an episode where Kirk is supposed to kiss Uhura, and the network doesn't want to do it because it'll piss off people in the South, right? Mm. And so what Shatner does is he does a scene where they kiss her, and then they were told to get multiple where he didn't. And he made sure to make a face or cross his eyes or do something stupid with his mouth in each and every one of those takes. So that they would have to use the kiss, Everybody on the show knew what they were doing and had an idea. And you got to remember also, Star Trek wasn't the only show doing this. Twilight Zone was very progressive as well. There was a lot of racial equality and things being handled it's easier to write about it when it's aliens than when it is when it's Northerners and Southerners, that kind of thing.
Well, I don't know about easier. It's just not for the writing part, but yeah, it makes it more palatable to people who are actually like that. Yeah.
But yeah, I would say probably out of the cast and crew, almost everybody, but I'd say out of the guys watching at home, I don't know. I would have thought everybody in the past until I heard all this, man, Star Trek is just too woke today.
Yeah, and you got to know that they were having those same arguments back in the 60s, I bet.
Oh, absolutely. They had to have been. They had to have been. So, Eric, out of a scale of 5 plasma torpedoes, what would you give this episode?
I would definitely give this episode a 4, strong 4, maybe even a 4.2.
I would say that's pretty fair. How about you, Chris?
Yeah, I'm on a similar scale there. Yeah, 4 plasma torches or whatever you said.
Yeah.